Hi, so in this video, I will be looking at what methods are and what functions are. So if you are following along this course, you have already seen a few examples of methods when we were learning about objects and data structures or data types in Python. Methods are special functions built into objects, and later in our course, we'll look at how to create our own, but right now, just look at some built-in ones. A method is something you can call off of some object. So suppose you have some object by the name of object, so you can call some built-in objects off of it by writing a dot and then the name of that method. So in our case it would be method. So suppose we have, and what do I mean by this? So suppose we have a list which is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, and if I press shift and enter and then write lst dot, after this dot, if I just press tab, you would see all of these methods I can use with this list object. So list is an object on which I can call different methods. So append is a method we have seen previously, clear is a method, copy, count, and all of these are methods. So what is a method? Method is a special function that comes built in with an object for doing something. In our case, append just appends something to the list. Suppose I want to append 4 to the list, so I will just write list.append, and inside the parentheses I will write 4. So what that will do, it will append the 4 to my list. In our case, it's just duplication, but if I just append 5, you would see that it will get appended to the list. And here you see, if we are willing to pop something out of the list, we can use the pop method off of this list. And if I don't provide anything, it will just pop the last value from the list. So just to summarize, a method is a built-in function that's connected with an object, and we can call it off of this object after writing the object name and a dot after it. So if you want to know what kind of method we can call off of this list, I can just write the name of the list and then press tab, and we have all of these methods that we can use with this list. So these are the functions. Now suppose if you just write list and then write dot and then you see and then you press tab, you will see all of these functions, but you won't know what these functions are or what they do. So in that case, if you are using Jupyter Notebook, you can just write the name of the method you want to use and then press shift and tab in front of it, and it will give you all of these details. Like in the doc string, you can see that the count is a function which we can call on a list, and it receives a value, and that value must be an integer. It returns a number of occurrence of the value. Suppose you want to count how much time W came in a string, so you can use this count. Now, if you are not using Jupyter Notebook, then you can just call help on this count function. And once you press shift and enter, it will give you all of these details. The important thing to note right over here is whenever you call help function on some method, it will give you all of the details about it. And if you press shift and tab on some method, it will provide you all of the details in the Jupyter Notebook. If you're using Jupyter Notebook, it will provide you all of the details if you press shift and tab. Help is if you're not using Jupyter Notebook, if you're using any IDE or even a notepad, if you use the help, it will provide you all of the details. Now the third way could be on finding out what this method does and what this method is. You can just Google it and the Python docs will tell you all about it. Or you can just look it up on Stack Overflow and stuff like that. So why am I telling you this? It's important to know, like in this video later on, we'll create our function, and with that function we'll provide this help message. So you should understand why is it important to have this help message, because if you're new or if you are an old programmer but you don't know what a function does, or what kind of parameters a function receive, or what kind of value a function return, so it's important to know about this help function, or shift and tab in the Jupyter notebook. Now that we know a little bit about what methods are, what they do, how we can use them, how we can provide parameter to them, now let's create some of our own functions. And I'm not talking about methods because we will look at methods later in our course, but right now, so what is a function? Formally, a function is a useful piece of code that groups together a set of statements so that they can be run more than once, and they can also let us specify parameter that can serve as an input to the function. Now, if you need a block of code right now, with having what we have covered in this course, if you want to repeat something, you would just copy and paste that block of code. So there is a better option in Python, and that is creating a function and calling the function again and again whenever you need that block of code. So how can you create a function? Well, you can just write def, and that is a reserved keyword, and then give name to the function, and that would be name of function. So this name of function can be anything. You can write it anything. After the name, you can provide the parentheses and then a colon. And after an indentation, whatever you write would be inside this function, which won't run until and unless you call this function. So suppose if I write print hello world, and do note that this hello world is inside this function. So until and unless I call this function, it won't run. If I press shift and enter, you can see nothing happens. But as soon as I call this function, and what is a call? It is just writing the name of the function and then adding parentheses after it. And if I press shift and enter, you would see that it will call this block of statements. So this is a function. You write def, which is a keyword, reserved keyword, and after that you write the name of the function, then parentheses, then colon, and after that the body of the function starts. So whatever you write inside that would be inside that function, and would get executed on the call of that function. Now, this was a simple function which printed out hello world. Now do remember this help function. So how can we do that? Because if I just call this function, press shift and enter, it won't provide me anything. Or if I just call help on it, so you can see that it won't provide me any help because we haven't defined that help. We just directly started this print. So in order to define this help, you can just add three single quotes, and whatever you write in this in this opening and closing three single quotes would get considered in the help of this function. I will just copy and paste the help from the other function and create mine. So I will say name is a function which doesn't receive anything, and let's just remove this, that does not receive anything, and it just prints out hello. So now if I save this function, press shift and enter in order to execute it, and now if I call help on it, you would see that name is a function, and name is a function that doesn't receive anything. Whatever we have provided inside these three single quotes, opening and closing. Now, what if you're willing? So now we understand how to create a function and how to give a helpful message to someone. And it's really important because if somebody else is working with you on the same project and they are willing to use this function and they don't know what to do with it, they would just call help out of it. And if you have provided some helpful help, indeed they will know what to do with this function. Anyway, now we know how to create a function and how to provide help to someone. Let's pass some arguments to this function. So how can we provide arguments to this function? Well, we can simply write arg1, and let's just make it simple. So instead of printing out hello world, just print hello and whatever name is provided. So that would be hello, and you can concatenate or use f string or whatever you want to use. So for the sake of simplicity, I will just use concatenation, and we'll write define is a function and it will receive a name, and we'll say name, it receive str name, just to give the programmer a little bit information about this, what this name should be. It should be a string. And let's just change this help a little bit, so it would be it receives a name and greets the person. Okay, now if I call this hello function, this name of function, so I have to provide a name, and let's provide I am a hacker, and if I press shift and enter, you can see that it says hello, I'm a hacker. So this is how you pass an argument to a function. Now if you don't provide this argument, so you will get an error, and that would be name function missing one required positional argument, which is name. Now if you want to remove this name and make this optional, what you would do, you would just assign some default value to it. It can be just an empty string or just a name or just some placeholder. If I press shift and enter and now run this code, you would see that it would just get this name, which is a default, and it will just print it out with the hello. And if you provide some name, which is I'm a hacker, it will override the default and it will just show you whatever you want. So you have learned how to pass argument and how to assign a default value to the argument in order not to upset Python. Okay, so after that you can provide any number of arguments to this function. You can just, and later we'll, after this video, in this video we'll not discuss star args and k args. We'll discuss that in later video. But to a function you can provide unlimited arguments. So suppose you provide the first argument as the name and the second is age, which is equal to, which would be defaulted to 0. And you can just print, let's just forget about the help right now. It was just for you to understand how you can provide the help, but right now let's just forget about the help. So you can just write your age is and then concatenate age. Press shift and enter, and if you call this function, name of function, and provide it name, I'm a hacker, 16, so strange, we get an error, and it's because we have to provide it a string and not an integer. If I make it a string, you can see that hello, I'm a hacker and your age is 16, and that's it. So my point is, right now let's just forget about the string and integer. We were just, our main purpose was to make sure, or my main purpose was just to show you, you can provide unlimited number of arguments to a function. Okay, so far we have seen how can you create help in a function, how you can provide an argument to a function, how you can create a function. So let's move forward and understand how we can return something from a function. Like in most cases, you won't use the function for printing something directly because you will provide some values to a function and then in return you will expect some result. Suppose we have a function that receives two numbers. The function name is add and that received two numbers. One is num1 and the other one is num2. And from this function, you expect a result. And that result is in the form of num1 plus num2. So how you can do that? You can just do that by writing return. And if you press shift and enter, and to this add, you provide two numbers. The first one is 40, and the next one is 30. And if you press shift and enter, you can see that it will give you the result as 70. So we have seen that if you're willing to return something from a function, you just write return keyword and whatever you want to return is in front of that. Now you can store this, like here we directly printed out 70 to the screen, but you can store it in a variable. Suppose we have a variable result and you can make it equal to this. To the result of this function or to the return of this function. And if you now write result and press shift and enter, you will get whatever we return from the function. So you can return something from a function and you can store it in a variable for later use, or you can use it in calculations, or you can do whatever you want to do with it. I don't know, man. So up till now, we were doing some useless things, but let's just do something useful, like where you would really need a function. So suppose you have a situation where you need to find if the number is prime or not prime. So what you will do simply is you will create a function by the name of isPrime, and you will provide a number as an argument to this function. And we'll create some help for this function. So later on, if somebody is using our function, they should know what isPrime is. So isPrime is a function, is a naive method. Let's just make things interesting. That checks whether the given number is prime or not. Now we have created help. So now let's create the body of this function. For checking if the number is prime, we'll create a for loop and we'll write for n in range, and we'll start from 2 and we'll go till the number that's been provided, and inside this for loop we'll write if num modulus is equal to 0, then print the number is not prime. Because if the number is divisible by anything else than 1 and that number is not prime. And if you don't understand what a prime number is, you can just Google it and you can just find out what a prime number is. Anyway, just to give you a little bit information, prime is a number that gets divided by itself and 1. That's it. So if the number is divisible by anything else than 1 and that number is not prime. Anyway, if the number is not prime, we want to print it's not prime, and then we want to break the loop. So once the loop gets finished and the number was not prime, so in the else part, we will say, and do note that this else is not with this if, this else is with this for. So in the else part of the for, we want to print this number is a prime number. And if I press shift and enter and call this isPrime on 16, press shift and enter, you would see that the number is not prime. Now let's look at a prime number, and that would be 17. So let's see what we get. and the 17 is a prime number. So this would be a use case for a function where you would again and again use this code for checking if the number is prime or not. So for that reason, instead of copy and pasting the code again and again, you will create a nice little function for it, and wherever you need it, you will call it. So this is pretty much it for this video. Just to recap once more, the first thing in this video we have looked at was what is a method. And method is a special function that we can call off of an object, and that comes built in. We can create our own as well, but that comes built in with the object. Then we looked at how we can create a function. We can create a function by writing def keyword and then the name of the function and then parentheses and then colon. After that, we can provide help and then the body of the function. Then we can call a function straight away by writing the name of the function and then parentheses, and that's it. If we need some help on that function, we can just either press shift and tab, or we can write help, and inside the help we can provide the function name, and this help would provide all of the information it has on that function. Okay, so then we can provide arguments to the function. Then we have looked at how we can provide arguments to the function. Arguments can be unlimited, so a function can receive unlimited arguments, whatever you define. We can also provide some defaults to the arguments of the function in order not to upset the Python. And in the end, we have looked how we can utilize the function in a more useful way. So this is pretty much it for this video. I hope you have learned all about what a function is and how you can define one and how you can use it. If there was something I have missed, just leave a comment down below and I will surely be there to answer your question. Have a pleasant day. Bye for now, and I will see you next time. Peace.